Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Doctor Who. A great episode, a great way to start off the season. I really like this very spy thriller aesthetic this episode have. I don't think we've ever really had that aesthetic in Doctor Who, so I think that's kind of pretty neat. Once again, I'm probably wrong because I'm probably forgetting something. And once again, I'm not that well versed in all things Doctor Who, but regardless, I did kind of like this episode starting where it did, kind of like seeing that, both Ryan and Yaz having to make excuses for what they're up to respected people like Ryan, the people who's playing basketball with, which I think that's kind of an interesting thing to kind of start off with, because even his friends like, yo, you used to never get on the court, obviously showing that Ryan's kind of grown through everything that they've been through, despite his coordination issue, that the fact of the matter is, he's trying, he's like, nah, next time I'm gonna actually get it in the net. So I thought that was kind of neat. And obviously Yaz lying, oh, she making excuses at work, trying to explain why she's kind of off doing her thing so often. I even thought it was kind of neat. Her sister kept asking for a phone number. I was like, I kept thinking it was probably Ryan's, because the first time we got introduced to her family last season was episode 4. Only reason why I know that is because I rewatched series 11. The fact of the matter is that her sister seemed interested in Ryan back then. So it's kind of kind of continuing that. That's kind of neat. I even love later on Ryan jokes about it. He's like, oh, you should give me your sister's number. She's like, no, it'd be weird. It's the fact is, he's like, I'll be a good brother-in-law. I'll be the best brother-in-law. And part of me was wondering, is it because it's kind of likes him, but I don't think so. It's probably just that thing of you don't want your worlds colliding, or you got one of your good friends and your sister. It turns into a weird thing, I'm sure. But I love that they all respectively get picked up by what is essentially MI6. What's also interesting too is we saw the Doctor working underneath the TARDIS. It's we've never seen that before, not that I'm aware of, which is also interesting because it makes you start thinking, it's because the inside is basically a dimension of its own. It's those cables, do those cables represent the dimensions from the inside, or does that kind of represent the outward dimensions of it as a police box? Is it a combination of the two? Am I overthinking this? Most likely. Even with my overthinking of it, I'm probably still thinking too small. Grand scheme of things, regardless, I love that they kind of get called in. The MI6 wants them and stuff like that. I didn't expect their driver to get killed. That was really interesting. And then the navigation system's trying to kill them. And they go to MI6, and lo and behold, who they meet? C, played by Stephen Fry. I was like, yeah, because I saw him in the trailer. I was like, Stephen Fry, that's so awesome. I even love he makes the mistake of goes to Graham and yeah. And someone's whispering. He's like, don't be daft. I've looked at everything about the Doctor. The Doctor's a guy. It's yeah, kind of upgraded since. And I was like, right. I mean, to be fair, it's when you look at the grand scheme of the things, the Doctor's always been a dude just across all of the Doctor's history. So it's kind of understandable. It's probably most people probably don't know about the Missy situation. Obviously, me bringing that up is very interesting, but don't worry, we'll get to that soon enough. But I'm most people probably don't know about that whole Master Missy situation. So probably knowing that the Doctor can do that as well, not many people probably know. I doubt, not everyone knows the biology of Gallifreyan / Time Lords, Well, it's more specifically a Time Lord situation, but I think it still applies to the biology of a Gallifreyan as well. Regardless, I just thought that was kind of an interesting little element. And I love, it's we're getting our James Bond on and everything. Because basically what we saw at the beginning is that basically spies all across the world are being attacked. And it's just kind of all right, obviously they keep in touch with what each other's enemies is doing. So it's no one's a part of this. So it's how are some of these attacks happening without, witnesses and stuff like that, no one noticing. So it's okay, something's afoot here. So that's why they're bringing in the big guns, the Doctor. And I love when the conversation comes down to it. It's wait, you got rid of, what was his Horizon Weather? No, it was Horizon something. But you got rid of him. And the fact is he's the only one in MI6 who really knew about aliens and stuff like that. And I love the justification being and I love that the justification is supposed to be oh, MI6 didn't know that aliens actually existed, which the Doctor's why aren't any of you guys communicating? Because it's you should have literally talked to that place, the communication area that got attacked literally last New Year's special by the Dalek. So it's like, yeah, but it's like apparently because they keep stuff so segmented, not every, agency handles a lot of stuff. Like all of the alien stuff gets handled by specific groups like UNIT and Torchwood. So it's like not really necessary for other groups to really know about that. But it's still like you'd expect there to be some communication. But I guess that's the whole thing of like, oh yeah, certain, governmental entities don't talk to others. But I love the doctor being like, well, yeah, we know UNIT's been taken care of. We found out about that literally last New Year's special. And then Torchwood is going to, which just hearing that still kind of buzzed me out because I'm like, in some shape or form, I'd love Torchwood to come back. I mean, to be fair, even prior to like what was basically the final season, Torchwood was kind of dead. I mean, technically, that all kind of happened. Technically speaking, I guess at the end of season 2/3 that really, I mean, they were still alive and well, but there's only like 2 of the OG members of Torchwood. Well, I quote unquote OG because, Jack's kind of the OG. But, only 2 members of Torchwood are really around anymore. So there's that whole situation. But regardless of all of that, once again, going on tangents and stuff like that. So, but I was actually kind of bummed when, C ends up killing Kid. I'm like, no, Stephen Fry. I was like, oh man, I was kind of hoping you'd be throughout the episode, but it's like, no. So sadly, that ended up being, but this is some interesting creatures that end up attacking them. I thought was kind of fascinating because apparently these things kind of go through objects and stuff. Well, they're going through physical space and stuff like that. And the fact of the matter is what was even interesting is that even the Doctor was shocked because like they were able to break through the TARDIS's defenses, which that's a rare feat. Like it's like, because even Yaz was like, how did they do that? I didn't think anything could get through the defenses. And even the Doctor was like, I don't know. Because she tries scanning them and it's like, normally her sonic screwdriver is able to say anything about what she saw, but it knows nothing about these things at all. So the team splits up. You have Yaz and Ryan going undercover to track down this dude, Daniel Barton, and try and infiltrate his company, and everything. And I love, like, obviously it's like they're both nervous about it because neither one of them has the training to be a spy and everything. And I love Ryan getting a little more nervous, and Yaz like, well, you get more nervous about it. He's like, in my head, I decided my name was going to be Logan, but then I got more nervous because I thought to myself, I don't look anything like Hugh Jackman. I love that. I love that Yaz had to be the one to kind of basically hold things together because like Ryan was kind of like a nervous mess, and she's like, oh yeah, he's kind of a big fan, he's nervous, so that was kind of interesting. And I do like, there's underlining parallels, obviously, because it's like, oh, like Daniel created this big search engine, Vor, and the fact of the matter is, but Vor expands into other stuff too, not just the search engine aspect. And the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, like, what we're creating here is kind of for the, gaining all this knowledge and stuff, like all this information is kind of betterment. But then Yaz kind of throws out, well, what about, cyberbullying? What about abuse? What about disinformation? Obviously, once again, bring parallels to real life in that regard. So I think that's kind of pretty nice. Didn't seem like he was too happy about that line of questioning. So, but then we got that interesting detail of like, wait, it says that he's 93% human. Wait, where's the other 7%? Because I didn't even talk about the other interesting aspect of like, oh yeah, all the spies that were technically killed. I mean, I guess they were outright killed, but it seemed like their DNA was 100% changed. Every strand of their DNA was rewritten to make them something else or someone else. So it's like, what's that supposed to be? Which now in the grand scheme of things, part of me wonders, is this supposed to be some situation of basically shifting all these people's DNA because you're trying to do it to the wide world area? Like in the sense that making all these people's bodies like not human anymore because it makes their bodies perfect vessels for whatever this enemy is. Because obviously, I'm skipping around here, but obviously the Doctor talks to one of them and it's like, oh, it's not here for the country, it's not here for the planet, they're here for this entire universe. So that's why I'm like, well, then that makes me think like, well, why would it just be an Earth thing? Like, not unless that's going to be the first step of getting, because whatever their form is, this is what they manifest as. And even the one that the Doctor talked to even said like, it chose its form because it finds humans. It was basically to mock humans, of basically almost like, oh, look how stupid your form is. It was was meant to be that. So it's almost supposed to be like, oh, we look like you, we have your shape, to be ironic, which is kind of a dick thing to say. But, that was kind of an interesting aspect to it. That's my immediate thought of like, why else would you 100% change someone's DNA like that? I mean, what other reason would there be? Not unless you're going to make them into a host. And it's like, not unless you plan to do that stretching across the entire universe, because it seems like we're coming from a situation of maybe they are from a different universe, because there was even that moment later on, the doctor was like, it's like the image within the image, and it's like, oh, like all these like coordinates are supposed to be all these dots representing these creatures around the earth. There's like hundreds of them. But then it's like it expands, and she's like, what's up with all these what's up with these, it's Earths, but what's all these multiple Earths? And I'm like, are we going down a multiverse route? Which, to be fair, we've already gone down that route before. We've never been like, it's never been like the biggest thing, but obviously it's been a situation of going down a multiverse route. I mean, Rose ended up in, like, her story ended with her, well, somewhat ended with her basically being in an alternate Earth. So, that turns into that situation. That's immediately where my mind is about that, but we'll kind of ultimately have to wait and see if we're dealing with like a multiverse situation. I'm assuming maybe they're from like a parallel Earth as well, or just maybe just a parallel universe in general. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. Because the doctor was able to kind of examine them and was like, yeah, but like she sent all her, like checked all the databases of all the different languages of every species and stuff like that in this universe and stuff, and nothing came up. It's something that was unbeknownst to her nor the TARDIS. So it's like, okay, so, what's going on there? And I'll really quickly talk about it. That whole Yaz situation, that tripped me out, dude. I was expecting like something was going to happen in a minute, but it's like, no, she got grabbed. I was like, what? And then it's like, I was like, no, wait, what? It's like, there's no way they're doing that. But I'm like, I wasn't sure what to make of that. And then she ends up in another world. And I'm like, is that supposed to be kind of like the upside down or something like that? Like, or is it supposed to be the world they came from? When she kind of pops back later on, that kind of made me nervous. I was like, is it, because at first I was thinking like, oh, those things circled her and then she got zapped. I was like, either that was them testing whatever they were doing, or it was supposed to, well, because, how the episode ends, like, because I'm skipping around a lot, but, like, I was wondering if that was supposed to be, what that was supposed to be, like, a test drive of testing to see if that would work. But also part of me is like, or, because part of me wonders, is Yaz back to being herself? Because, once again, we never found out Barton was a 7% something else. Part of me wonders, in that moment, did Yaz become, like, 7% something else, too? Like, is something going to go on there? It might not be something that I don't know. I'm jumping the gun there. I was about to say, like, maybe it's something that's kind of going to be a seasonal storyline, or maybe it's just something that's going to be resolved in all of this, or maybe that's something, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe, because I was wondering if she just got teleported there. Was there, like, it just seemed like that's such a significant thing, and I'm curious whether it was just them testing it out or there's something else. Because I almost halfway expected like that was going to be the form all of them took for now when they look like Yaz. I thought that's kind of what that was kind of implying, like they took her form, like basically took her DNA and made it their own. We'll kind of have to see. Obviously, it's kind of sad because like in that moment, Yaz was terrified. Like, they've been through a lot, but that was a moment she legitimately like, oh, I thought I was going to die. You spend enough time with the doctor, obviously that's that moment, like I said, they've been through a lot, so obviously, but I think this situation was a little different because it was almost a thing of like, she kind of was like, it's not like, oh, we could potentially die. It's like, no, I thought I was dead, so I'm curious to see, where that ends up taking us, like what that kind of means for Yaz going forward on these adventures. Maybe it means something, maybe it won't, I don't know. But even that heart-to-heart moment she had with Ryan, where Ryan was like, I'm never going to let that happen, like, because Yaz thought she was going to die, and I think for her, she's trying to, keep up a strong front, but, she's terrified. So, like I said, I'm curious to see, what that ends up turning into. And then on the other side of things, we had Graham and the doctor meeting with O, played by, interestingly enough, I could be mistaken, but isn't that the actor who played Davos in Iron Fist? I was like, hey, Davos. But regardless, it's kind of, she references the fact that she's met him like once, but I'm like, I don't remember. I have to look that up. I have to look into that more because I don't remember when they met last. But regardless, it's kind of sad because it turns out like apparently he kind of got let go because he was the only one that believed in aliens and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, the MI6 was like, oh, you're an idiot. Yeah, turns out not to be the case. I thought it was kind of interesting though, like, well, because obviously later on, like, they end up. The fact of the matter is, when you actually kind of look back on some of those things, it's like, yeah, a lot of that stuff. Well, because I think it's interesting because it's like, they never brought it up, but like, he waited until the last minute to kind of put the fence. I feel like he should have told the guards to kind of come in and then put up that fence. I mean, most of those creatures ended up bailing just because it was like, we got, need to kind of go back. But one of them was kind of breakthrough. So I'm assuming that's supposed to be like the top dog, the leader, the one that the doctor was talking to. So I'm curious, like, what that means kind of going forward. But I just thought that was, fascinating. Kind of like, couldn't you put that fence up a little sooner? But maybe not the case. I mean, maybe it's like, oh, it was supposed to be the first line of defense after them, and then you had a second line of defense, and all that kind of ended up faltering and failing. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. There was also another thing that kind of pointed something out. I was like, oh yeah, I love that conversation between Graham. It's like, they're talking because it's like, oh, do you know about the doctor or where she's from and everything? Which is like, Graham's like, no, the doctor, which is interesting because the doctor rarely talks about where they're from. Like, the whole Gallifrey thing is always, to be fair, when you look at it in a grand scheme of things, Gallifrey, the Time War, it's like not, wouldn't be anyone's favorite subject considering everything that kind of went down with the whole Gallifrey situation. So it's understandable. But I like that being acknowledging this too, being like, oh, so they don't know. Because obviously it's a whole thing about like, because even Graham, it's like, yeah, he's like, because O was like, yeah, I met her again, like, but she was a man the last time we met. And I love Graham being like, what, really? It's like, what, you didn't know? He was like, I thought she was joking. Like every time she kept referencing being a dude last season, like being that before, it's like, right. Because it's always that new conversation with new companions about like, all right, you don't know about the whole regeneration process. They were there while she was still kind of like, regeneration was kind of ending. Part of me wonders, now having rewatched Series 11, there was a thing at the beginning. I don't know if that ever was coming back to being anything. Remember while she was regenerating, like Grace and Ryan were standing there. There was a bit of her regeneration that left. I'm like, that was just kind of like, I guess it just floated off and disappeared. But we know what that potentially, I'm like, that's something, right? I was like, because I remember when I was rewatching, I was like, I don't remember that ever coming back up. It's like, is that something that's going to pop up this season? Or was it just something that's like, oh, it went into the air and evaporated? It's like, they made a point to show you it going past Ryan and them seeing it, but maybe nothing else came. Like I said, maybe it just purely dissipated. But I'm like, I don't know, the doctor's regenerative energy, like I said, we'll see. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, having rewatched it. But regardless, I just thought that was kind of interesting. But the moment he was like, oh yeah, I've got all this information about the doctor, I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. It's like a lot of it contradicts itself and stuff like that, which I'm like, oh, is that supposed to be kind of a wicked nod to just like the Doctor Who lore, because some of it's kind of gotten retconned subsequently. So I'm like, oh, I wonder, is that supposed to be kind of a wicked nod there? But I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because I doubt there are very few humans around who know all there is to know about the Doctor. Maybe like Unit might be one of the few. Maybe, I don't know, like as I'm reading too much into it, but still. And I do like, obviously, they're figuring this whole thing out because obviously we had Daniel Barton meeting with those creatures. But the whole question then becomes like, well, was he meeting with them because he orders them around because he was telling them to be more discreet? But the fact of the matter is it didn't seem like they were following his order. So is he following theirs? Like, is it kind of a mutual agreement? I think it's kind of interesting, especially because it's like, because what ends up being the case is because I didn't talk about that, but I thought it was kind of interesting aspect where the Doctor was basically saying these things are from whatever they're from, they're spies from their world. They basically came to slowly but surely wipe out our spies, gain intelligence, and kind of, I guess, like kind of help basically knock out Earth's like earliest defenses, maybe that being spies, or it's like, well, when you don't have anyone out there kind of reconning info for you, like it kind of makes you a little more vulnerable. Maybe that's kind of the whole point. Maybe there's a deeper criminal element to that. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. But I did like the fact is them going to Barton's party and everyone getting all like dressed up, and I'm like, the Doctor's obviously going to say the line, isn't she? And it's like, yes, she is, the Doctor. I'm like, yes. Also, like, maybe I'm reading too much into this too. I think her style, like the way she looks in that, it's like her, almost like, like I said, everyone got dressed up, but like hers in particular, I thought was kind of fascinating because it seemed like it was almost a combination. And once again, this is me reading too much into it. Kind of reminded me a little bit of a cross between 11, 12 and herself. just because it's like the jacket heavily reminded me a little bit of 12. It looked like there was some red lining on the inside, but I don't know if that was like something else. Like, because later on when I saw it, it seemed like it was multicolored, but it almost looked like at one point like there was red lining to her jacket. Like I said, not unless I'm mistaken, which obviously that was a thing that 12 did. That was part of his outfit. I mean, in fact, that's actually the outfit she was still wearing at the beginning of the last season. So, but also like her pants were kind of her. And then obviously, once again, it's like it comes with the suit and everything. But I like to think bow ties and everything, it's kind of a little bit of 11 coming through just because obviously 11 thought bow ties were cool, you know? So that's what I'm thinking. Like I said, I thought it was kind of a combination of, Jody, Peter and Matt. But like I said, I could be just reading too much into that. But regardless, I just thought that was just, like I said, and I don't know, there was also this like sinister element of like when the doctor confronted him, I thought was kind of confronted Barton, I thought was kind of neat, where he was like, oh, you must be out your mind or something. She's like, no, I think I've got this all figured. And he's like, oh, like, she's like, I'm not that easy to get rid of. And he leans in, he's like, I wouldn't be too sure. And I'm like, oh, I mean, to be fair, I think it's kind of them going for that Bond aesthetic, which obviously I'm making references to Bonds. I've actually never seen a Bond movie all the way through. I know it's kind of a little blasphemous, but I should take time to do that, especially, it's like Daniel Craig ones are a great place to start, especially with like No Time to Die, like right around the corner. Essentially right around the corner. But I just thought that was just I think that was kind of what they were kind of going for. Even like the chase on the bike and the car and him shooting out of it, I was like, that was pretty badass. I also love the fact is it's like Graham and Ryan betting and stuff like that, and them winning. It's like, yeah. I also love like Yaz and O, and she's rolling down. She's like, oh, did we win? He's like, no. What was it? Happy and happy and love or something like that. And she's like, did they really say it? He's like, no. It was almost like this cute moment. I was like, that seemed like that was something like, oh, and Yaz. I was like, oh, that's something, but maybe, because of Yaz's situation, maybe they'll play into something later on. Once again, we'll see. But obviously they're following, Barton, and they jump on the plane and everything. That's what I thought was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, I would have expected Graham to be the last one, but apparently it was O, and I'm like, huh. And then the doctor was like, yeah, apparently, she's like, you're bad at sprinting. It's like, apparently, like, sprinting is actually his thing. She's like, I read your file and everything. He's like, you got me. I'm like, wait, what? And then it's like the big reveal. I'm like, what? And the doctor being like, no way, it can't be you. I'm like, I love that reveal because it's like, because your mind goes at a million miles an hour. It's like, wait, how is that possible? The last time we saw the master literally killed him. Well, him/herself, because the doctor, who the doctor was before, like obviously the master that we had met. I think the last time we saw the master looking the way he had previously was season 4, because it was I don't think he popped up in that form after that. I think that was the last time we saw the master in that particular form. That was his previous regeneration prior to Missy, but obviously he had killed Missy, and so it's like, wait, what? So that starts begging this whole question of like, okay, so if that's the case, like, because at the time I was like, oh, you're about to regenerate or something, but it's like, no, it seemed like it was a permadeath. So it's like, so how are you alive? Not unless you're the master that got away, but that master, because time works the way it does. So it's like Missy was going to be your future. So that was going to be your future, not unless at some point in time you actually survived that and didn't actually die there and you did regenerate again. But then the doctor apparently has met O before, but it's like, oh yeah, the reason why is because I've always been O. So it's like, it was a long con. It was a long game. I'm just waiting for this opportunity. I mean, obviously the master and the doctor go way back. He even brought that up. It's like, wait, it's like, oh yeah, best friends, rivals to the end. And it's interesting, especially considering like we're building this off of like the doctor and Missy's relationship, especially because Missy was trying to be a good person again. Like I said, Missy kind of flip-flopped, but Missy was, trying to be good. So it's like, what does that mean going forward? But then, like I said, not unless they're trying to say that the one that got away, the one that was literally dying, but it was in the process of regenerating, that version of the master. Because I don't remember like, wasn't Missy the next regeneration after that form? Or is there space between that form of the master and Missy? So is this version of the master in that in-between space? So does this technically take place before like everything that went down season 8, 9, and 10? I don't know what to make of that. hell of a way to kind of get us started off in this season, also leave us there, because it's like the plane is going down, and obviously like the doctor gets teleported to wherever it was that Yaz was teleported to, and it turns out the master is the one that has been working with these creatures. I mean, it's like, well, you should have been looking for, the spy master, and lo and behold. And so it's interesting because it's almost like he's giving himself a title at different times, because it's like, well, you're the master before, you were the mistress, and now you're a spy master. I mean, granted, it's kind of the same thing. It's still all the same thing, but especially, in the grand scheme of the master situation. But I just thought it was kind of interesting. It's almost like you're trying to give yourself a different titling. But it also explains like why you know so much about the doctor when literally no one knows that much about the doctor, because no one basically living right now, at least that I can really put in mind, no one living knows the doctor that well. Other person that would be like River, but she's gone. Everything with Clara, so there's very few living people who would know that much about the doctor. So that should have been like I said, a red flag in itself. And just like, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting in the grand scheme of things. So group finds himself in a very, very, very dire situation. I'm curious to see how they get themselves out of that, a plane literally crashing and stuff like that. It was all, and then there was that line I thought was so good with the master is like, I want to tell you this right before everything goes down. The fact of the matter is, everything you think you know is a lie. And it's like, wait, what does that mean? Because remember, and this is something I brought up during my discussion of the trailer, like the doctor's being chased by something. Now it seems like, well, maybe it's the master. But there's another part of me that's like, remember those things from the Ghost Monument episode? They called the doctor, God, I forgot what they called her, but they were basically saying that there's something in her mind that even she isn't aware of, something that's kept from her. So I'm guessing it's supposed to be like a lot about the doctor's life, and just, what was it they called her? It was, I can't remember now. I'm blanking on it. They gave her a specific name last series. I literally just rewatched the episode and I don't remember now. That's going to bother the hell out of me. But like that was something they never really 100% resolved. So I'm guessing we're kind of circling back to that storyline in a sense of finding out like, okay, so what does the doctor not know about herself? What does she know that is completely and utterly a lie? I guess maybe it's related to these creatures, but maybe it's everything of just about herself in general. Maybe it's something about Time Lords. Maybe it's about Gallifreyans, or maybe it's, like I said, it's just herself. Like, what is so hidden from her? Was it something that the Time Lords hid from her about herself? Because obviously, like, her family history is something we dabbled in a bit, even in this version, because she talked about her different grandmothers at one point in time last season. So it's like, what does, the family situation makes you wonder, like, okay, once again, I'm ignorant on a lot of Doctor Who lore, so I don't know if that's something that's been explained way, way in the past or not about the Doctor's history. But I think the Doctor's always been kind of a bit of an enigma, so it seems like we're definitely going to be trailing down that lane this season. Like I said, great way to start off the season. A lot of like, wait, what? So I'm curious to see where this all takes us. Do note, keep in mind, the next episode isn't going to be next Monday. It is going to be Sunday, January 5th, and subsequent Sundays will be the new episode. So do keep that in mind. Obviously, this is part 1 of Spyfall. Sunday's episode is going to be part 2, and I'm curious to see what this story, how the story ends up playing out, but also what this all means going forward for the rest of the season. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Like, I don't know why I said that weird. It's really all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.